Getting attacked by bugs out here. So this is part 3 of my wiring series of videos, but it's not really going to be as detailed as part 1 and part 2. I don't really like how those videos turned out, so maybe at some point I'll do like a full wiring video where I just go over a wiring diagram with you guys about how I do everything. That being said, none of these videos are really how to wire or how to anything. It's just how I do it. I'm not a trained mechanic, I'm a wannabe mechanic, and I'm certainly not an electrical engineer. So make sure you do your own research aside from this. But if you want to see how I laid everything out sort of more in detail, you can see part 1 and part 2. This is just going to be kind of cleaning everything up. I have some tape like this, cloth electrical tape, kind of sporadically wrapped around wires. Yeah, I'm just gonna go through, put some heat shrink where I have this cloth wire, and then once I do that, I'll loom up all the sections that are exposed in the engine bay. I'm also going to change out my grounds. I am gonna put bolts where I have these self-tappers. And I know a lot of you guys got pretty mad at me over using those in the first place. But honestly, I say as long as it works, it works. This doesn't work. I gotta connect that a little bit better. That's why we're going through this whole thing again. But that's fine. We'll redo that one, get a better connection. Let me get a snipper for this guy. I should probably be using bullet connectors for these. They have a self-insulated area so you don't have to wrap them after the fact or heat shrink them after the fact. Right. So this wire comes from the other headlight. That's what this spliced together here is. And this comes from the other headlight as well. So I need to redo this guy, connect this back to the other headlight. Alright, so since those came apart, I just stripped them back, twisted them back together, and now I'm going to probably twist them up one more time and then replace the connector, the male connector that came off of them, and make sure that the heat shrink and everything goes on good. And I will put some dielectric grease on it. Yeah, you can see it's already coming apart. I gotta twist that up a little bit better. Alright, so I spliced those back together, twisted those up, put the heat shrink on this guy too. I'm gonna do the same thing with the power in for this guy. One more thing I forgot to mention is on all of the female connections, you want to heat shrink all the way up to the top. I only did to the bottom of the connector, but if you go all the way to the end like that, you have no chance for it to ground out on any surface when you disconnect these, if you disconnect these and the headlights are still on for some reason. This one is for the horn, and that's why it's got black on it. And then you can see the headlights still have red on them. So I'm gonna do the same thing over here on this headlight. I'm just gonna go through and put heat shrink all the way up to the top of these female connectors, and then we'll be good to go there, and then we can move on to doing the bolts at some point. But I really want to unscrew these guys and get this wrapped up ASAP. So heat shrink, then this probably. But let's do this first. All right, so those are good. Those are good when we put them together. Right, so now I'm done with the headlight, all the connections on the headlights, and I'm moving on to the coil. So the coil to the distributor wire has that cloth electrical tape. I'll replace that with some black heat shrink probably, and then the power wires coming into the coil will get red heat shrink. So after I do that, I'll jump over to our starter relay and our continuous duty relay. Just going through this area now, pulling off all of the wires from our starter relay and taking off all of this cloth from these connections. So this is a diode, and I have one here as well. I am not an engineer, nor do I claim to be, but I do know that putting this across these terminals is a good idea. So I'm gonna unwrap this and see if I can't salvage it. And this is the problem with this tape. It is impossible to take apart. This stuff does not conform very well to the shape that it's taking when it comes to very small things. So at some point I'm gonna have to replace this because this looks really weird, but I think it looks better than the tape in any case. So that'll sit right there and just kind of be a straw, bent up straw. But yeah, I'm gonna do this ground wire and then we'll be done with the continuous duty relay. And then we'll be done with everything over here. Well, I think that looks a lot better than it did before. Try to get you guys in the shade there. I think it looks a lot better there. I've gone through and done the heat shrink on the front, done the heat shrink here inside the engine bay with our continuous duty relay and the starter relay. And now I'm just going to measure how far this needs to go. I might end up using all of this here, but I might use some of it inside. I don't know. I'm gonna see how much we need right here first. So I'll set you up and I'll do that. So I am going to, on the firewall, there's a space for a factory gasket, and I am gonna put that back in, or I might make one, but I have the original one lying around somewhere. We'll just have to go find it when we're ready to put it back in. But for now, I'm just going to lay this along here. And yeah, I mean, it is cutting it close. I really just want to get rid of the wires on this edge here. There are wires going, in front where the radiator support is, but I don't know if I really care about these wires up here. So from the front of the car, it doesn't really, you can't really see the wires running in here. So I just laid this out to where the end will be right there. Alright, it took a little bit of finessing, but I got all this stuff here wrapped up. I was thinking from here over, I should do something. I don't know what I'm gonna do quite yet. Yeah, we'll have to figure out something for that, but the majority of this is all covered up, so now I just gotta get some bigger clips, which I have over there somewhere. So I'm gonna go trade these out and then put this back on and see how it looks. And there we go. Everything's wrapped up. I have a little bit more to do on the inside, but that's the look. Nice and cleaned up. You can barely see any wires in the engine bay. Of course, if you're looking from the side, you can see those wires there, but we'll get to those eventually. I think these guys here deserve a little bit of cleanup, so I gave them a little bit of cleanup. Alright, so we're inside the car now, and we sort of have to pick and choose what we want to heat shrink in our fuse panel section, because this little kit that I got, which I only really got it for the connectors for the battery, it only has so much heat shrink in it. So I think what we're gonna do is just choose the most important connections, which I think will be the relays. We'll do those, and then I think I'm also gonna do the middle connection, which is the power in from the relay to our headlights, or to the headlight switch rather. If there's more heat shrink after we're done with those, we could go behind here to some of our switches, which you can see I have cloth electrical tape on. Yeah, for now, I'm gonna get to this. And then this connection here, I just tried to run this one back, get the slack out. That's for the high-low beam. And yeah, there's no way the way that I have it set up. So I'm just gonna cut this, get this off of here, cut that to length, and then we'll just have to say goodbye to that little piece of heat shrink. But I'm not gonna do that right now. I'm gonna do this guy right here. So this is the main power out for this secondary fuse block, and on the other side is the main power in for this relay. So I'm gonna do this guy first, since it's easy to do it right here. And I'll probably just skip forward in this and show you guys the aftermath, but yeah, get to it. And there you go. One more down. So now these ones are connected all the way. You can see they're wrapped up all the way. And that is going to be the trigger wire. And then that's the power in right there. So that's the one that I want to really focus on. And you can see when this stuff gets unwrapped, it really leaves this nasty residue, which I do not like. I've used this stuff on other projects and I thought it was fine, but this one was extra sticky, so I'm not going to be using it in the future. So I'm going to get that wire off, unwrapped, and heat shrunk. Alright, and you can see the reason that I wrapped that is because I didn't have enough heat shrink the last time. A little bit of dielectric grease on the connector, a little bit inside the heat shrink tubing. It's a little uneven on the end there, but that is better than it was before. So we'll put that back in there. And we'll call that good. So it's been 2 days since I was working on everything, and I really want to get a video out to you guys, so I'm going to put a pause on cleaning everything up. I still have a few things that I should do in the fuse panel, and I need to get some more loom for the inside wiring. But I'll just go over with you guys what I've done. I did the headlights, like I showed you guys before, did the relays, and then I moved this loom up a little bit, so it actually goes up to here now instead of going back to here. So I pulled a little bit out from under the dash. And the last thing you guys would have saw me doing was the high-low beam. So I finished that. The power in, the high and the low are all heat shrunk. It was really just the power in that I needed to heat shrink there. And then underneath the dash on our fuse panel, I did all the connections for our relays. Although you can see the ground for the relay on the left and the trigger wire for the relay on the right, they were already heat shrunk before, and I had actually wrapped them with the cloth electrical tape before heat shrinking them. So I'm not gonna go through and do that right now. I gotta cut the heat shrink off at some point and then unwrap it and redo it, but that's just a looks thing. And then I've started pulling out some of the wires for our switches, because the wires for the Bosch tack, they're a little bit too long, and I didn't want to shrink them up at the time, so I'm gonna go through and do that as well, but that'll be for another video. And then I also need to replace the wires going out to our taillights, because well, I didn't have wires that were long enough, and now I do. So if you went into this cloth electrical tape, there'd be a connection there. And same thing right here, there's a connection there. So it's just, you know, I want to replace this all with a continuous wire, you know, or continuous wires all the way to the back, and then loom them up. So that's all stuff that we'll do in the future, but we got some stuff done, and that's what matters. Just, you know, one thing at a time. So until next time, thanks for watching, and see you guys in the next video.